What does it mean to live a life without regret? I turned 40 this year and I've been noticing a shift in myself. I think it's a natural shift that comes with getting a little older, but I've noticed acutely, especially this year and especially recently for a variety of reasons. I've been thinking so much more about my mortality than ever before. And so when I stumbled upon this podcast that a dear friend and client of mine sent to me, um, I have not been able to stop thinking about some of the concepts that these two individuals discuss in this podcast. So today on the Possibility Mom Live, I want to unpack some of the principles discussed in this podcast. I want to discuss what it means to live a life without regret. And I have a few completely free or basically free tools to help you do the same. That's what's coming up today on the Possibility Mom Live. Living a life without regret is a fascinating thing to think about. There are many different ways that we could analyze or ponder this question. And I do believe that it's going to be influenced by our values, by a myriad of other things. And so, my goal for this podcast is to almost treat it like a little bit of a short retreat. I'm hoping that you can track with me and the questions that I'm going to invite you to ponder to get more clear on what really matters to you and the kind of life you want to live, and then what activities and actions and decisions need to be in place in order for you to live this life. So, I'm going to begin by sharing something that is very near and dear to my heart. I would say that for the most part, if I were to die tomorrow, I have no regret. But it's taken me a very long time. I would say the last 10 years of my life, especially, have been ones of great clarity, ones of great growth. I would say the last 2 years of my life have been excruciatingly um, stretching, but very clarifying in what is important to me and what I want to be remembered for on earth. And so before I share this podcast with you, this one that I've listened to 4 times, this one that I am so grateful that my friend and client sent me, I want to share with you an event that is so near and dear to my heart. It is happening in Ave Maria, Florida, which you all know is very, very important to me, very special to me. And it's a life called the Respect for Life Rally. And it's happening on Sunday, October 20th, right in Ave Maria, Florida. And there are some incredible special guests who are attending, who are coming for this event. One of the, I'm going to just pull it up here on my phone because I'm sharing my screen, but you cannot see it. So just bear with me for a minute. For whatever reason, the view that is on my screen is being cut off. So just give me one moment. Okay, so this event is happening on Sunday, October 20th. So just a few days from time of this recording. And it's happening in Ave Maria at 1 p.m. Eastern. I really want to encourage you, if you're in the Southwest Florida area, to attend. And it's featuring what you can't see here because it's being cut off on my screen. So I'm just going to go like this. What it's featuring, who this live event in Ave Maria is featuring is Eduardo Verastegui, the actor and producer on many films that you would recognize, Bella, Sound of Freedom, and many others. So he is coming to share some thoughts. Logan Church from Catholic Vote, Lauren Mello, the Florida State Representative for District 82, Manuel Milanes, the Hero Award recipient, Bishop Duane from the Diocese of Venice, and Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart from Florida District 26 are all coming to Ave Maria October 20th, where there will be prayer, where there will be music, where there will be a rally. Knowing this community, there are going to be a lot of people there, and they are gathering to rally and to galvanize around voting no to Amendment 4, which, if you are familiar, is critical. Voting no on Amendment 4 is critical for Florida's future and respect for life. For respect for life from the moment of conception, for respect for these lives that honestly are so innocent. And so if you are in the Ave Maria, Florida area, or in the Southwest Florida area, or if you want to take a road trip in time for this completely free rally with an incredible lineup, it's happening in the Field House right on AMU campus. There is a link right below wherever you are listening to this or watching this, where you can go and get your free tickets. It's completely free. I personally know the people who are organizing this. It is going to be an incredible afternoon of galvanization, of beating to the same drum to stand up for what is truly important. Having the courage to even speak this way was not always something that I would say came naturally to me. And exploring this topic again of a life without regret means that you need to bring great clarity to what is actually important to you. And so, this podcast episode that I'm talking about, that just really has been in my ears, like I have listened to it now 4 times. And I'm actually going to just share a little bit of the podcast with you. So, this is an interview on the Howard Bailey Retire with Purpose podcast. I had never heard about this podcast before. And it is with a doctor, Dr. Jordan Grumet, who wrote a book called Taking Stock: A Hospice Doctor's Advice on Financial Independence, Building Wealth, and Living a Regret-Free Life. And he talks about how the end of one's life can teach us so much about clarifying what's important. So I'm actually just going to play the first few minutes.
If you're afraid that you're going to die young and not enjoy your wealth, that tells you something about who you are and how you should spend money today. On the other hand, if you're like me, who's afraid that you're going to live long and run out of money, that also tells you something. And the reason why we should be thinking about where we fall on that spectrum is each and every one of us, no matter how much money we make and no matter how good of a financial framework we build, all of us still have to question every day, should I spend my money now or should I save it for later?
Okay, so let's unpack a little bit some of the highlights of this podcast. So I'm just going to share, like I said, I've listened to it now 4 times. Very grateful for you, Dr. Jordan Grumet, and grateful for you, the Howard Bailey Retire with Purpose podcast, because you've given me a lot of room, like food for thought. I agreed with the majority of the podcast, but there was one really egregious, like one very glaring missing piece that I want to unpack. So I'm going to just summarize the high level. I encourage you to listen to this podcast. It is about an hour and plus long. I put the link for this original podcast down below in the show notes. But essentially what he talks about is how his experience working with hospice patients, so they're coming to him in the last 6 months of their life. He had, hundreds of conversations with people. And as you can imagine, what people would say about their life wasn't things like, I wish I had hit that net worth of blank. I wish I had gotten a raise that took me to, $300,000 a year. I wish I had had, more money in the bank. They weren't saying things like that. But what they were talking about was not having the time or the energy or the courage to do the things that they really wanted to do. Figuring if it's either going to outlive you or if you're not going to have enough of it, how that can influence the way you live and act today. At the end of their life, would say that yes, they wish they had more money, but only so that it could fuel the things that they cared about. They want to support their grandchild going to college, or they wish they could. He talks about some interesting things when it comes to YOLO, like you only live once, and waiting too long for either the experiences or perhaps the items that could give you an experience, like a car, for example, that was like your dream car, waiting too long for those things. And then, of course, purchasing them too early and then not having enough money to do other things. Fascinating, fascinating, fascinating podcast, especially in the realm of money management and mindset around money. So, encouragement to go listen, especially if you're interested in more the financial planning element of end of life. Like if you're thinking about those kinds of things, very fascinating. But what I really liked about this podcast was the conversations around purpose. So what Dr. Jordan Grumet argues is that for many of his patients, they were only kind of grappling with what their purpose was in the last 6 months of their life. And what he argues in his book is let's not wait until the end of our life to figure out our life's purpose. And so that is obviously where I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with this statement. I lived way too long worrying and living my life for other people, like trying to satisfy the priorities, the expectations of other people. It took several cataclysmic events, including my minivan meltdown that I share in my book, The Possibility Mom, for me to have a literal come to Jesus moment where I had to say to myself, like, this is not the life I think I'm supposed to live. I'm not supposed to be working this much and this hard and be so distracted and not be with my children. It took tremendous, just yeah, falling on my face and thinking about what is truly important and what truly lasts. Like, what do I get to take with me to heaven? I don't get to take my money, but there are things that I can do in my time here that will leave a very indelible mark and, God willing, get others to heaven. So, purpose is truly the drumbeat, if you will, like what gets me very excited when I'm out talking to Catholic mom groups, for example, when I am out coaching the clients that I coach, when I am talking to people about what they've learned about themselves by reading my book, The Possibility Mom. What's under all of that, what gets me so excited is purpose, helping particularly Catholic moms learn and live out what they have been put on this planet to do. And one of the manifestations of that, of course, is the work that I do with women in business, the work that I do with Stephanie Donahue in the Wealth Without Guilt Mastermind, and the other things that we do together, the Wealth Without Guilt Academy, where you, if you're a beginner especially, you can learn all of the elements of running an online business. And so I wholeheartedly agree. It does not need to take a death sentence, literally. Like, it does not need to take a life, um, uh, you know, threatening prognosis to clarify your purpose. It is also not too late. That's one of the things I loved in the podcast. It was so encouraging. He was like, you might be listening to this because it's a podcast about retirement, right? You might be listening to this and think it's way too late. I'm already in my 60s. I'm already in my 70s. It is never too late to live a life of purpose, inspired and informed by God's will for your life. It is never too late to do that. And I can feel myself getting really emotional, and you can see this if you're watching it on YouTube. Like, I'm getting emotional talking about it. And what I think is so emotional about it for me, like what hits me very sensitively about this topic, is when we are living in line with God's mission for our life. Like when we have done the work, when we have paused for that self reflection, when we have put aside for a moment maybe the expectations of our parents or of teachers or even of our spouse, like just expectations of anybody, when we have just put those aside for a moment and instead turned to God and said, Lord, like, what do you want me to do with this time you have given me? How do you want me to use these gifts that you have given to me and no other? What happens when that happens is impact. It's multiplication. It's other lives being impacted for the better. It's the world becoming more tender. And then ultimately, it's other people coming to know and love Jesus Christ by your life. For me, that's what gets me so worked up about this topic, that your life can be an answer to someone else's prayer. That your life, just by you saying yes, by you getting up every day, by you walking and living a life of purpose, that you can help others live incredible, meaningful lives. And of course, that's our families. Like, I have been thinking, it's been so interesting. I have been thinking so much about fulfillment and what that looks like in family life. And for me, it's like I feel deeply fulfilled when I can walk, especially with my older children. My younger kids too, but it's obviously different. But when I can walk with my older children and help them navigate life's challenges, like friendships at school, like, what courses to take, like doing hard things or growing in virtue in general, when I can walk with them and help them to trust the Lord with everything, there is just, oh my word, like, and watching the people they become as a result of all of that is deeply, deeply fulfilling to me. There is something just so incredible about watching a human being that you have created, that has come out of you, that is a combination of you and your spouse. There is something just so incredible and mysterious and inspiring in watching them become the person that they're going to be, and the path that they're going to go on, and the light that they're going to be on the world, and the mission that they're going to live out. On the podcast of Dr. Jordan, on this Retiring with Purpose podcast, they talk a lot about time and how we can think in our head that I'm exchanging time for money. So when I'm, hiring out to do blank, I'm getting some of that time back, right? So if I'm hiring somebody to, do my laundry, or I'm hiring somebody to clean my house, it's like I'm getting that time back. But that is definitely a misnomer, because time is the exact same for everybody. Time is the one thing we know is going to just pass, and we can't do anything about it. And so this brings me to the point in the podcast where I really did kind of disagree, or I just had a big problem with, because it's such a glaringly obvious thing that they didn't address. They mentioned how, for a lot of people in their world, at least this is what I'm interpreting or inferring by the conversation, that people had to like establish themselves financially. They were kind of, I don't know, I'd have to listen again to this exact section, but they were saying something along the lines of, for a lot of people, they make themselves financially set before they then can explore their life's purpose. And I think what I take just a great, such great issue with that, obviously, is just, and I don't think they were saying it was right, just for clarity, but they were saying it's something they observe so much. And here's the thing: when you have a life driven by an understanding that this is our temporary home and that we are made to be in relationship with a God who loves us and knows us intimately, not just as some mass civilization, no, intimately, created us specifically and uniquely. When you are living a life where that is your truth, money then becomes the tool you can use again to live out your mission. This is the part of the podcast where I was like, oh my word, like, do you both know Jesus? Because like that's a massive missing element here in this conversation. A huge part of knowing your purpose is understanding our anthropology, understanding that we are created to be in relationship with Jesus, that he wants to be in relationship with us, that he desires it. We have the free will to say yes or no to it, but that's what he wants for us. I've been kind of sharing along the way, and I don't mean to be like mysterious about it. I just sort of prefer to keep this private. But I had an experience at Cent Ventures, the summit that I went to at a gathering for Catholic business leaders. I had an experience with the Lord that really just, I heard him really clearly say, "This is what I want from you." And it relates to just sort of some different prayer practices. It relates to a few changes that I've had to make in my life. And I've started slowly. I'm going to be honest. I've been very reluctant about them because I'm viewing them as hard and I keep telling myself that they're hard. But anyway, I digress. They're really, just I've been reluctant, but I've been doing some of them a little bit at a time. And I can already feel the transformation. And it's made me feel extremely convicted to encourage anyone who will listen to me that a life of relationship with Jesus is worth pursuing. And what this relationship looks like, it's not just like, okay, great, I went to church on Sunday, or okay, great, I like put my kids through their classes and I'm making sure that they're going to church. It's a relationship like you have with any other person in your life. Of course, very different, very unique, but in the sense, in a practical way, where you spend time together. And that time is time in prayer, time where you can listen to hear his voice. I coach a lot of moms who say, I don't know what God wants for my life. And I'm like, well, have you asked him? And like, sometimes people say, no, like, I haven't actually asked him. Like, you can ask him. And I'm like, yeah. I have been working with an organization that I love, Catholic Christian Outreach. And in fact, today they announced something very, very special. They announced a refresh of their mission statement that was founded in university campuses, but is now expanded to include parishes, to include dioceses, to include global partners. It is such exciting work. And so I've been chatting with and getting to know better one of its founders, Andre Renier, and he talks about prayer like you're having coffee with a friend. So, for example, if you get together with somebody for coffee, you're like gonna greet them. You're gonna be like, "Hey, how are you doing? Oh my gosh, like, how are the kids? Tell me all about your life." And then you let them respond. And then similarly, they might ask you, oh my gosh, how are you doing? Like, catch me up on you. And then you respond like a literal conversation. Your prayer life can be a literal back and forth conversation. But the challenge is, I think, today in our modern world where we do have a lot of distractions, where we do have a lot of places our brains can go, we cannot make time to just stop and hear his voice the same way that we would stop and have coffee with a friend. And where all that's sort of available to us, is them in front of us. My husband hates it when I pick up my phone with good reason. Like if we're like sitting in the middle of a conversation and I'm just like, oh, I got to just check one thing. He is not a fan. He would love it if my phone never existed, was never near me. Similarly, it's like when we're in our prayer time and we're kind of like, oh, let me just check one thing. Like you wouldn't do that if you were, with somebody, because it just wouldn't be as respectful. So just thinking of prayer like a conversation, what I have seen in my own sort of like, again, the fruits of some of the new things I've been trying have been, I hear the Lord's voice. I hear it clearly. And that is a huge part of understanding like what it looks like for you to live a life without regret. Because to me, I am so tender today. Oh my word. Because to me, living a life without regret is one where you have discerned very carefully, what, Lord, do you want for my life? And when you have discerned that carefully, when there has been enough time where you are sitting in silence in his presence in front of the Eucharist, like in adoration, when you are taking that quiet, contemplative time, and you have discerned, you've heard him, you've explored it, you've tried different things, and you sort of get that peace that makes you feel like, okay, I think I'm on the right track here, Lord. I think we all know what that feeling is of like, wow, I was born to do this. It's because you probably literally were. Like literally, God was like, I'm going to give Lisa Canning these specific gifts. I'm going to give her the gift of communication. I'm going to give her the gift of hospitality, like these very specific gifts. And you discern what they are. You practice them. If you listen to my podcast with Jill Simons recently, we talked about what it looks like to activate your spiritual gifts. When you have spent that time just exploring what they are, how they can bless others, how they can be a gift to others. That to me is how you live a life with no regret, because you have aligned yourself to God's plan for your life. You have aligned yourself to his will. You have explored and investigated your unique design, the gifts that the Lord has given no one else but you to do in a way that no one else can do it. I believe that's how we live a life of no regret. Okay, so now you might be thinking, okay, I'm with you. I get it. I maybe don't hear God's voice in a way that sounds like you do, Lisa. But I kind of get it. I get what you're saying. But this is still so foreign or so nebulous. Like, what does it mean to live it out? In a similar way to this podcast with Dr. Jordan Grumet, they talk about, okay, because time is finite, right? He uses the analogy, and I think it's a great one. If anybody knows the game of life, okay, now at one point, the game of life, now forgive me, I might be mixing this up, but I'm pretty sure this is the case. At one point, the game of life, oh no, I am mixing it up. It's Trivial Pursuit that looks like this. But anyway, the analogy is fine. Trivial Pursuit, if you've played the game Trivial Pursuit, it's like a little circle and there's like little pieces of the pie, okay? And you like put in these different colors, okay? In the game of life, at least the one that my kids play, it's like a little car and you're filling it with like family members, as you pass these different stages. What he argues in his podcast, which I agree with, and this is the answer to how to live this out practically, is we need to be filling these passages of time that are inevitable, like we cannot control the passage of time. We need to fill these passages of time, call them 90-day worlds, call them 1 month at a time, call them our weeks, call them ideal weeks, whatever you want to call it, our plan of life, whatever it is. We need to fill these passages of time with meaningful activities that allow us to live out our unique call. Let me say that again. We need to fill these passages of time with meaningful activities that allow us to live out this unique call for our life. And I believe this takes some analysis. So, one of the things I want to pause right now before I expand on that any further, I said that this would be like a little mini retreat. So, I just want to pause and ask you the question: do you know God's unique call for your unique life? What is the thing that you can do that no one else can do? And I just invite you to just carefully, like, just pause for a moment. If you want to literally pause this podcast, feel free. But just for a moment, contemplate. Do you know what it is that you are meant to spend your time here on earth doing, that the Lord has uniquely equipped and called you and you alone to do? So that's question number one. Question number two is about this passage of time. Do you know the activities that will make it possible for you to live out that unique call? And like I said, this might take a little bit of analysis. This might take a little bit of like trial and error. You might need to take a look and take inventory of all the things that you do and literally categorize some of them. These activities give me no life. These activities are actually a massive drain. These activities are things that I could like maybe do, but like I would be not so sad if they went away. And these are the things that I love to do every day that bring me so much joy and so much fulfillment. Another exercise that can be really, really helpful in clarifying all of this is just sort of pressing fast forward and thinking about how you want to be remembered at the end of your life. I ask this question a lot to my business coaching clients. You know, it's a great question to ponder. I ask my business coaching clients, if your business was so successful, you know, for the next 60 years, it was so successful beyond your wildest dreams, how is the world different because your business was successful? I think that's an incredibly clarifying question. But then, of course, just thinking, okay, fast forward to the end of your life, fast forward to an 80th birthday, fast forward to your retirement party. Who are the people in that room that you have impacted? And what do they have to say about the impact of your life? That can be hugely clarifying. And so, question number two for reflection that I want to invite you to pause on right now in this podcast is, are your current activities, the current things you do every single day, if you keep doing them, are they going to lead to this future version of you that will make the kind of impact that you've discerned and that you desire? And then the next thing we need to do that I believe will help us to live a life of no regret is to then, of course, just take stock and inventory of our life and ensure that our activities are actually informing and living out our purpose. If someone were to look at our calendar and see what was on our calendars, like literally, if you were to just share your Google Calendar with anybody right now, if you were sharing your iCalendar, if you were share your physical day planner, and somebody could read all the things in it, would they know what is important to you? And if not, then we need to do some digging and make some habit changes And that's really what this next sort of thing is that I want to invite you to ponder is what are the habits that would have to change in your life today to make it possible for you to honor those appointments, for you to put those little blocks in the, trivial pursuit pie or in the little game of life to make those meaningful, fulfilling activities actually happen? What habits would have to change? If I died tomorrow, I truly, and I'm not trying to say this to brag or anything like that, but I really do feel like, all right, Lord, I have at least begun. I've begun some of the things that you have asked of me, and I don't regret how I've used my time. But like I mentioned earlier in this episode, that took a lot of work. It took a lot of prayer. It took a lot of discernment. I had to fight through a lot of noise and people telling me what I should do with my time. I had to really deal with my own inner critic. I had to deal with a lot of distractions. I think Instagram has become an interesting place for distraction for the Catholic mom because there are a lot of voices on there, incredible voices. Like, let me hear it loud and clear, incredible voices. But now we have access to so many opinions. We didn't used to have you might have had the opinion of your mom, your mother-in-law, your girlfriends, whatever. Now we have the opinions of thousands, I guess. I mean, millions, but you don't really consume millions of pieces of content. But you're consuming a lot of content, mine included, that might make you pause and think about how you live your life and sometimes make you feel less than, or maybe sometimes make you feel inadequate. And so this is where we have to just get so clear on what is important to us and what has the Lord uniquely equipped us to do. Sometimes in these sort of mommy wars, let's call it, of I'm a working mom, I'm a non-working mom, I'm a stay-at-home mom, I'm a whatever, right? These boxes, these labels, these sort of, things that we can hold on to, they make us feel safe. People like this do things like this. They make us feel safe. My safety, 100%, and I encourage you to make this your safety as well, is only from what the Lord wants for my life, wants for my unique call to sanctity, what he wants for my unique family, my unique marriage, my unique relationship with my kids. And that is it. That is my safety. I do not cling to any boxes or any labels. The only label I want is, Lord, am I living according with your will? Sometimes you need a spirit, well, all the time. I am so grateful for my spiritual director. I believe all the time we need a spiritual director in order to help us navigate this and make these important decisions sometimes that do impact on how we spend our time. But that third question for ponder that I invite you to ponder is what habits would have to change in your life in order for you to live a life of no regret, to live a life where you are living in line with what the Lord wants for you and your unique mission. So, if this content is interesting to you, and I really do hope it is, I want to offer you two tools. One is completely free, one is virtually free. The one that is completely free, I am so excited about this. As I was listening to his podcast, okay, this podcast by Dr. Jordan, so grateful that they created this piece of content. Like I said, listened to it so many times, it's impacted me so much. It made me think that, wow, there are a lot of people out there that don't know their purpose, that are just living their life based on some ideals maybe that they inherited, from their parents or inherited from society, but they have not actually reviewed or reflected if these ideals and values are important to me. And so several years ago, I created a video series called Purpose Driven Productivity. And it's such a sweet series. I love it so, so much. I made it when my kids were like, John was, I think, only about 10 years old. So it is a little bit like it's a younger version of me, slightly skinnier version of me, younger version of my family. But I do believe it answers the question of how you live a life without regret. And so I want to offer this video series completely for free for you. It's a 3-part series. We like beautifully filmed it. I kept saying when we made it, like, I want this to win like an Emmy of the internet, whatever those are, because it's a beautifully shot series. I filmed this when I was living in my home right before Ave Maria, Florida. And it was a really cool home with like, exposed beams, and there was like a log cabin. Well, no, not a log cabin. We called it a cabin. It had that really cabin aesthetic. And I'm just so proud of this series because I think it asks a lot of these important questions, and it has these worksheets attached to it that you can like process. It'll help you process some of the things. If you're intrigued by the content that I shared with you today, it will help you process some of the things that we've been talking about. And so this will be free for a limited time, October 18th all the way through to October 24th. So I'm just going to make this available for just a week. I'm going to make it available on demand. So meaning you can log in, you're going to get access to this 3-part video course with the worksheets, but I'm also going to show up on Wednesday, October 22nd. That's this coming Wednesday, October 22nd at 7 p.m. East to help you process. So it'll be live Q&A, live coaching, and I want to help you process some of the materials that I share in the workshop. This is for the mom who feels like she might be overwhelmed. The thought of figuring out her purpose is overwhelming because you're already so busy. You're already so overwhelmed. You already feel so stretched. This is for you. I created this for the mom who's so exhausted by the end of the day that there's only energy for Netflix and wine in bed. I created this for the person who is so tired and has given up on time management because you're just living from moment to moment. I've created this for the person who wants to pour into their family, but also maintain a beautiful home and a sense of, self. I created this for the person who wants to find more time for themselves, to perhaps ask these big questions, to make time for prayer, to make time for contemplation. Again, completely free access. You just need to go to learn.thepossibilitymom.com/PDP free. That's learn.thepossibilitymom.com/PDP, which stands for Purpose Driven Productivity, PDP free. And then I want to share, if you already know that your unique call is business, I want to invite you into my Wealth Without Guilt Academy, which is my online learning portal. Everything, literally, like everything you need to know about building a business online, tailored for someone who has no experience, or perhaps you've been in business a while, but you've not yet gotten the online aspect of your business to flourish. I want to help you out with a $1 free trial. So for 1 month, you can come on in, see what it's all about. I'm live there once a month on the first Monday of the month for live coaching, and you get access to an incredible portal of learning materials, of coaching call recordings, all my past business summits. So that's like 90 interviews with leading Catholic experts. It's just a beautiful place to spend time, in my humble opinion. So you can go to learn.thepossibilitymom.com/one trial to learn more about that. And let me there we go. Sorry, I didn't share this tab for those of you who are watching. So that's a limited time offer, $1 free trial of the Wealth Without Guilt Academy. Go to learn.thepossibilitymom.com/one trial to learn more. I care about this so much because I think I lived a great portion of my young adult life living for other people. And what I mean by that is just, again, living to the expectations of other people. I lived for so long in my young adult life wanting to please others and live my life based on what was important to them. And it took a decent amount of time for me to build up that clarity and that courage to live life based on what I felt like the Lord was calling me into. And similar to this podcast that I, sort of used as our grounding point for conversation today, I don't believe it needs to take so like to the end of your life to figure some of this out. I believe that you can be figuring it out now, living it out today, and the impact of all of that can be immense. I hope you like this podcast. Please let me know. Share it with someone who you might feel would benefit from gaining clarity around what it looks like to live a life without regret. Thank you so much, Sheila, for your beautiful comments here and for saying don't miss out on your chance to work with Lisa and hear her share her wisdom. Highly recommend. Thank you, Sheila, so much for that. I pray that you have a wonderful rest of your Friday. If this jostled up anything in you, please feel free to DM me at Lisa Canning on Instagram. Join me for Purpose Driven Productivity, completely free event. And you can find the link for that, the $1 trial, and that incredible event in Ave Maria, Florida, coming up this Sunday, wherever you are watching or listening to this. God bless you and have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time.